And now Becky Lynch. Went for the manhandle slam. AJ turns it around. Tap out. Punk and AJ win.
Here's why Becky Lynch felt disrespected by AJ Lee's words. When it comes to WWE, rivalries aren't always born from share shots, betrayals, or surprise run-ins. Sometimes, all it takes is one sentence, one carefully chosen jab, to ignite a fire that can burn for years. And that's exactly what happened between Becky Lynch and AJ Lee. In a world where words can be as devastating as a steel chair, AJ Lee's sharp tongue and biting promos struck a nerve that Becky Lynch could never quite shake off. This is the untold story of how one remark, one seemingly simple statement, made Becky Lynch feel not just challenged, but downright disrespected. To understand why Becky Lynch felt the sting of AJ Lee's words so deeply, we first need to step back and look at who these two women were at the time their paths began to cross. AJ Lee was already a trailblazer. Coming into WWE in an era when women were still labeled divas, AJ wasn't supposed to succeed. She didn't have the supermodel look the company prized. She wasn't cast from a reality show. She was a 5'2" punk rock gamer girl with a chip on her shoulder and a microphone that cut deeper than most men in the locker room. AJ made her mark by being unpredictable, brilliant in the ring, and, most importantly, fearless on the mic. Her hype bombshell promo in 2013, where she called out the Total Divas cast for being reality TV stars instead of wrestlers, wasn't just entertaining. It was a manifesto. AJ wanted respect for women's wrestling at a time when the company barely cared. Meanwhile, Becky Lynch was still fighting her way up the mountain. Long before she was the man, Becky was an Irish teenager chasing a dream most people told her was impossible. She trained in dingy gyms, wrestled in tiny halls across Europe and Japan, and even walked away from wrestling altogether after a serious head injury. When she finally signed with WWE and made it to NXT, Becky wasn't handed anything. She wasn't the most hyped prospect of the four horsewomen. She wasn't a Flair with a famous last name. She was the scrappy underdog, the fiery redhead with a thick accent and a chip on her shoulder to match AJ's. Every match, every promo, every crowd reaction she earned came from pure hard work and relentless self-belief. Now picture this backdrop. AJ Lee, the reigning queen of the Divas division, a woman who had already broken barriers by holding the Divas Championship for a record 295 days, suddenly decides to speak her mind about the next wave of talent. She delivers a promo, half kayfabe, half real talk, aimed at the so-called new generation of women wrestlers coming out of NXT. The words were sharp, the tone dripping with sarcasm. AJ claimed that while the new girls were talented, they were benefiting from doors she had already kicked open. She framed herself as the pioneer, the woman who suffered so the next wave could enjoy main event paydays and 20-minute matches. And buried inside that promo was a line that made Becky Lynch's blood boil. AJ quipped, "You're not revolutionaries, you're beneficiaries." For Becky Lynch, those 8 words cut deeper than any opponent's finisher. To the casual fan, it might have sounded like clever wordplay. But to Becky, it was a dismissal of everything she had fought for. She didn't see herself as someone who simply walked through a door AJ had opened. Becky had spent over a decade grinding across the globe, taking bumps in half-empty gyms, risking her health for a dream that nearly broke her body and her spirit. To suggest that she was merely a beneficiary of AJ's struggle felt like an insult to every sacrifice she had made. Behind the scenes, Becky tried to stay professional. WWE is a business built on promos, after all. But in interviews and backstage conversations, she couldn't hide her frustration. Becky admired AJ. She had watched AJ's rise and respected the battles she fought during the Divas era, but admiration didn't erase the sting. Becky believed that evolution in wrestling wasn't the work of one person, no matter how talented. It was the result of collective effort. Every woman who wrestled before her, from Trish Stratus to Lita to Sarah Del Rey, had chipped away at the walls. Becky felt that AJ, in claiming sole credit, was rewriting history and downplaying the grind of everyone else. The tension only grew when Becky made her main roster debut in 2015. AJ had retired earlier that year, but her influence lingered like a shadow. Reporters constantly asked Becky about AJ's comments. Fans flooded Becky's social media with clips of the promo, tagging her with questions like, "Is AJ right?" Or, "Did AJ carry the division so you could succeed?" Every interview turned into a subtle tug of war over legacy. Becky, still carving her own path, was forced to answer for someone else's words. Becky's resentment wasn't about ego, it was about respect. In her mind, AJ Lee had every right to be proud of her accomplishments, but claiming that the next generation was simply cashing in felt like a slap in the face. Becky had bled for this business, traveled continents, and endured career-threatening injuries long before AJ's so-called revolution began. She didn't want AJ's validation, she wanted recognition that her journey was independent, hard-fought, and every bit as revolutionary. Let's not forget that AJ's comments didn't come in a vacuum. This was the dawn of the women's evolution in WWE. Fans were chanting, "Give divas a chance." NXT TakeOver matches between Sasha Banks, Charlotte Flair, Bayley, and Becky were stealing the show. The company was finally, begrudgingly, starting to treat women as serious athletes. For Becky, this wasn't a movement handed to her. It was a war she was fighting in real time, match after match, promo after promo. AJ's words felt like someone taking a victory lap while others were still on the battlefield. What made AJ's remark even sharper was her reputation for blurring the line between reality and storyline. When AJ spoke, fans never knew where the character ended and the real person began. Her hype bombshell promo years earlier had exposed the superficiality of the Divas division and made her a hero to hardcore fans. So when she called Becky and her peers beneficiaries, it wasn't just a character talking. It sounded like AJ herself, the real woman behind the mic, casting judgment. And that's what made Becky's blood boil. If it were just a scripted line, Becky could shrug it off. But this felt personal. In the locker room, Becky maintained her trademark professionalism. She didn't fire back with a scathing promo. She didn't vent publicly. Instead, she did what she's always done. She let her work speak for itself. Night after night, Becky delivered show-stealing performances. Her matches with Sasha Banks and Charlotte Flair raised the bar for the entire division. She cut fiery promos that connected with the audience because they came from a place of truth. And slowly but surely, the fans began to see Becky not as a beneficiary, but as a cornerstone of the revolution. But Becky never forgot those words. Years later, when she became the top star in the entire company, headlining WrestleMania, selling out arenas, and breaking merchandise records, interviewers still asked about AJ Lee. And Becky, now with the confidence of a proven main eventer, finally began to address it more openly. She admitted that AJ's comment had fueled her, that it had pushed her to prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that she was not riding anyone's coattails. Becky didn't just want to succeed. She wanted to succeed so completely that even AJ Lee would have to acknowledge her greatness. Fans began to pick sides. Some argued that AJ was simply speaking the truth, that the four horsewomen did benefit from the doors AJ kicked open. After all, AJ had fought for respect in an era when management gave women 2 minutes to wrestle.